Morning, time for to turn our attention to the NFL. Mike Carlson, I don't know where you want to start, but that was one of the all-time great weekends of sport from an NFL perspective. Where do you start?
Probably with the first game, because they got better as they went along. I can't remember a weekend where it was so good. And I mean, Sunday's games, the Rams in Tampa and Buffalo, Kansas City, were both exceptional games. But the two on Saturday were pretty good games. Not as much offense, but you had three games all decided on walk-off field goals, followed by an overtime game decided on the first possession. So I don't know how much more you could have had. And on the Buffalo Kansas City game, I was sitting pretty, I thought. 2 minutes to go, I picked the under, which was 53.5 points, and it was 26-23. So there's 49 points, and I'm thinking, okay, now somebody kicks a field goal, the game's over. I've won the under. We're all set. And they scored 24 points in the last minute and 54 seconds.
It was phenomenal. And so this had been hyped as the battle between the two best young quarterbacks, certainly the best. I mean, I think people are kind of getting back to Mahomes as best in the league, even though he wasn't spoken about in the MVP race. That was a straight shootout between the two old-timers. But these are the two quarterbacks who are, it seems like, about to set up a dynastic rivalry over the next decade or so. And they did not in any way under-deliver. In fact, they over-delivered on all the hype and the build-up.
Yeah, and what you've got is somewhat similar in the sense that they're both very mobile. And we saw Mahomes early on take advantage of that mobility because Buffalo was covering his receivers and running was the only option he really had. They're sort of different in a way. And because Allen can be a run-first quarterback if that's what they want to do. And basically by the end of the game, that's pretty much what they had to do. Allen, if Allen wasn't running the ball, he was having to run to get time for a receiver to get open, which was usually Gabriel Davis. And for Mahomes, it was more of a straight drop back pass situation where he'd had to scramble to make some time for himself, but not to the extent that Allen did. It was a fantastic chess game, really, and one that changed. And that's, I think, to me, the amazing thing is how the strategy changed and how it played out so much differently in the last 2 minutes of the game as opposed to how it had for the first 58 minutes.
Andy Reid, in the aftermath of the game, said that he said to Mahomes before the comeback, I guess, but when it's grim, be the Grim Reaper and go get it, is the quote he used to him. Like, I mean, when you talk about quarterbacks and the relationship they might have with the Grim Reaper, I think everybody thinks of Tom Brady, first of all, the sort of fear that he would have put even into, I'd say, a lot of Rams fans' eyes last night. Does Mahomes already have that similar level of fear when he's going up against people, and regardless of what situation he's in, that this guy is going to get it done?
Yeah, I think so. There was that period in mid-season when they were having problems, but they adjusted to that. Andy adjusted to that. Teams realized, and this was the thing about this game, how do you stop Mahomes? Well, everybody looked at last year's Super Bowl, and you play too deep. You keep Tyreek Hill, therefore, in front of you and under control. You let Kelsey. If they're going to beat you, you let them beat you with 8 or 10 yard passes to Kelsey, which they have to keep making. And Andy adjusted to that and adjusted quite well. And Mahomes did. And now he's back into the mode of the last couple of seasons where just as you say, people fear him. And what I love is watching the shots of him on the sideline where, he goes to the sideline, sits on the bench. And usually you see, like, they're looking at their tablets or they're talking to this, and Mahomes is sitting there like he's waiting in a dentist's office for the next appointment. He's just so relaxed and casual. And the great thing is that Kansas City and Buffalo will probably for the next few seasons be able to stage this kind of match almost annually because they were obviously the two best teams in the AFC. And, most of us were considering that this game was sort of the AFC championship game. No disrespect to either Cincinnati or Tennessee, but these two teams are on a different level to those two. And and when I say Cincinnati, Joe Burrow and maybe Justin Herbert, are the next two guys coming along in the AFC, as well as great young quarterbacks.
Yeah, it looks like it's well set up for the future. Famously, George Best at the Nou Camp in 1999 walked out when Bayern Munich were 1-0 up against Manchester United in the Champions League final and missed the 2 injury time goals for Manchester United that won the European Cup. I went to bed last night when Tampa Bay decided to kick the field goal. I was like, this game's over. It's whatever, 23-6 or whatever it was. Tom Brady's getting battered physically, mentally, emotionally. This is the end of it. I don't want to see this. I don't need to go. And then I woke up this morning from a WhatsApp. One of my mates, I love the playoffs. It was like 11 o'clock. I'm like, hang on, that must have been the first game. But what happened? And I almost missed one of the all-time great sports stories.
Yeah, it maybe if it had been 28-3 instead of 27-3, Brady could have engineered the full comeback. But the difference between Brady and Stafford, I think was pretty clear there, and everybody was jumping all over. Tom Brady's the luckiest of all time, not the greatest of all time. Blah blah blah. The thing. Branch Rickey, the baseball gentleman, once said, luck is the resident of design. And the thing with Brady is he just stays so calm that as the situation gets more and more intense, you make a mistake and then he starts to punish you for it. So he literally got better in the last 10 minutes of the game, and Matt Stafford got worse. And other things are going on around because it's a team game, and we concentrate on the quarterbacks, but that's not the whole story. And then I thought Tampa just basically took their foot off the pedal and allowed those 2 passes to Cooper Kupp, and full credit to the Rams for going for it. And Stafford hit both of those passes to Cooper Kupp, which set up the winning touchdown. So, we weren't treated to a second overtime game, which probably would have been a lot of fun to see. But, it turned into a great contest after one that really did look like Tom Brady's all done. And, everybody's saying he's going to retire and whatever. Plus, he got his first ever disorderly conduct citation for complaining to Sean Hockley that he'd been fouled when Von Miller hit him helmet to helmet in the head, which was a perfectly valid complaint, and it happened literally in front of Hockley, about 3 feet away from him. And why he didn't call it, I have no idea. But there's Brady with his mouth bleeding, and Hockley gave him, I think it was the third. They had 3 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalties.
Yeah. And that, those penalties over the course of the game, they all add up, particularly in a game that ends up as close as it did. So, but is it the end for Brady, do you think?
He wasn't saying, which you wouldn't really expect him to. I think they got to this point without part of their star lineup, and everybody talks about the Rams, and the Rams brought in Odell Beckham and they brought in Von Miller, when they had holes in their lineup they needed to fill. I think a lot will depend on what they intend to do next year. Now, maybe Brady feels beat up. Maybe he's feeling 44 years old. But getting this close and then being frustrated to a guy like that probably brings him back for another year. And it was a bad day basically for the really old quarterbacks. The new breed is coming on. Aaron Rodgers, couldn't do very much in Green Bay, but neither could Jimmy Garoppolo, to be fair. And Green Bay wins that game if they're simply able to play special teams, and they couldn't do that.
Well, they can't count.
And they can't count. That's right. The last play of the game where Gold kicks the winning field goal, they only had 10 guys on the field just to make it interesting. It's bizarre, that a team all of a sudden can melt down in one category, and blocked field goal cost them 3 points. Obviously, the only touchdown San Francisco got was on the blocked punt, and then they didn't have enough rushers on the field goal that San Francisco kicked. So, it's a totally different story. And I think what we saw, it's funny too, because normally when you're in the division round, the bye week teams are usually automatic good favorites. They're at home. They've had a week's rest. They're, by seeding, at least the better team. So it's usually easy to pick them. And then some people say, oh, you should, if you can't decide, pick the team with the better quarterback. Well, in the case of Cincinnati, Tennessee, I was amazed that people were still picking Tennessee, because Cincinnati, I thought, has the better quarterback. And, Tennessee's defense was simply not able in the end to stop him, despite sacking him 9 times. And my friend Doug Farrar came up with the stat: the last quarterback who got sacked 9 times and won a playoff game was back in 1966 in the American Football League, before the leagues merged. It was Lenny Dawson of the Chiefs, who's in the Hall of Fame. And they won that game over Buffalo 31-7. How your quarterback gets sacked 9 times and you score 31 points and win is kind of beyond me. But, I thought that game boiled down to Derrick Henry not quite being 100%, but they were treating him like he was. And Devonta Freeman, every time he touched the ball, he gained 8 to 15 yards carrying, because he was hitting the hole more quickly than Henry was. And I was amazed that they didn't go to him just a little bit more than they did, and Burrow's played well. Jesse Bates announced his stardom, I think, the safety for Cincinnati in that game. But, now everybody's going to go in and look at the championship round, and you have Kansas City at home against Cincinnati, and I doubt anyone's going to be thinking that Cincinnati is going to win that game. And then you have another matchup between San Francisco and the Rams, and for Sean McVay, who basically comes out of Kyle Shanahan's nascent coaching tree. San Francisco's kind of had the Rams number, but they're playing in LA. That's going to be a really interesting game as to whether they can generate enough offense to get to the Super Bowl. I noted that Jimmy G was, I think he threw, it was 11 for 19 for just over for 130 yards or something like that, which is virtually the same statistics he had when they made their playoff run in 2018. And got to the Super Bowl. They did it mostly on rushing. Raheem Mostert had over 200 yards in one of those games, and Jimmy G they weren't letting him or making him pass the ball a lot. So, I think that's going to be a really fascinating game. But, I doubt it's going to be anything to match the 2 games on Sunday. I mean, that's an all-time day. It's a great weekend, but that was an all-time day.
Is Aaron Rodgers done?
No, I think he probably goes somewhere else. But that to me means he goes to a team that's got a legitimate shot at being a contender. And I've been saying the same thing when I pick games for, 5 or 6 years. How much you pick Green Bay is based totally on how much faith you have in Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it's really a question about MVP, because he so obviously puts the team on his shoulders week after week, and if he has a bad game, they're going to lose. The obvious kind of landing spot in terms of talent would be Denver, a team with pretty good talent all around, including a pretty deep receiving core. That lacks a quarterback. And, so maybe John Elway goes up to the frozen tundra and persuades him to do it. But the other thing that we don't know about is his off-field career. Like a year ago, he was talking about being the host of Jeopardy, or Jeopardy was talking about him being the host of Jeopardy. And he has a girlfriend in the business. So, he obviously wanted to sort of be on the West Coast. Denver isn't quite on the West Coast or a media center in those terms. Plus, he's kind of marked his card a little bit with all of the COVID controversy around him. So he's all of a sudden not quite as popular a guy as he was before that. So, maybe he just makes a football decision to keep going. He doesn't have to. He's not like Tom Brady in the sense that he doesn't seem driven to always, have to win. I could much more easily see him hanging them up and saying, well, it's been a good career. But, I still think it has to kind of nag at him that, only once was he able to take that Green Bay team to a Super Bowl win.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's definitely going to be a mark on his legacy. Mark Dunning wants to ask, can you ask Mike if he thinks the Bills should have squib kicked the last kickoff to try and take some time off the clock?
Yes, I was amazed that they didn't. And the situation is you've got 13 seconds left, and they kicked through the end zone, which gave Kansas City the ball on the 25 with 13 seconds left. A lot of teams have taught their kickers, or the kickers have developed, just to kick short on it, sometime on occasion. You remember Gostkowski used to do this for New England regularly. You put the ball around the 5-yard line, and then the other team has to run it out. And if they don't run it out beyond the 25, you're ahead of the game. But whether you squib it or you kick short or, pooch kick it, whatever, the clock doesn't start till the player touches the ball. And he's never going to touch the ball if you kick it through the end zone. So he touches the ball and runs it back. He's unlikely, the risk is you're going to give up a great kickoff return, but they don't have a great kickoff returner. And you therefore use up 3, 4, or 5 seconds. Now Mahomes is down to 10 or maybe even 8 seconds to go 75 yards, or let's say they have a decent return, he has to go 65 yards. It's much, much harder. And so as it was 2 plays, they gained 43 yards and they kicked a field goal. It was pretty impressive that he was able to do that. The idea that you kind of can't cover Travis Kelce on 2 consecutive plays over the middle of the field is bizarre in itself. But that's the way it goes. And to me, a lot of people are whining about the fact that there's no second possession in the overtime. But to me, they lost the game there, where they allowed that field goal in only 13 seconds.
Yeah, Mike, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's 9:34 this morning. Dahi says the last 4 minutes in the Tampa Bay Rams match, an insanity of entertainment. And Shifty lads, good morning Shifty. I watched it live, the 4 games. Buffalo was probably the best team. It was incredible. Stupid kick with 17 seconds left to go to lose to a coin toss. Bills Mafia slamming tables everywhere. But I think that there won't be a table slammed in Buffalo tonight.
No, there certainly won't. Tables are safe. As you say, it's going to be a magnificent rivalry over the next little while, Mahomes versus Allen, and it already has thrown up so many amazing moments. But what marks these weekends out as one of the best weekends of the year, every year in sport in general, is just some of the brain dead stuff that goes on, like the Packers with 10 men on the pitch, like even Shitty that referring to a stupid kick. It's like decision making and the breakdown of straightforward human decisions in these high pressure moments, which fascinates everybody.
It is really interesting, isn't it? That the defence gets awful when there's only a minute left in the clock. They kind of forget how to defend, and all of a sudden, the rest of the match you were taking 8-10 minutes to move the ball from the 25 to the other 25. Now you can do it in 2 passes.
Yeah,
it's like I'd love somebody who understands game theory to explain this to me. The whole sense of jeopardy and like everything's on the line right now. It's been on the line the whole game.
Yeah, and
the stuff that you were doing the whole game really worked, but now you stop doing it because you're like, we need to stop them from getting out of bounds because time is most important. It's like, okay, I'm just going to run straight down the middle of the field. It's mad. It's really mad. It's like when the All-Ireland Hurling semi-finals were so wild and before Limerick had become the greatest team of all time, the jeopardy, you did not know what was going to happen for a couple of years there.
Yeah.
But this is that multiplied because there's 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100%. Like for Limerick's first All Ireland, that semi-final weekend was crazy, and just the closer it gets to the end, it's this unbelievable feeling of tension that even if you don't have a horse in the race, like you've got that feeling in the pit of your stomach that anything could happen here, and it's just incredible. It's hard to look past yesterday as one of the best sports days of the year. It'll be hard to top.